This is a tri-generational conversation for emerging leaders, the Limitless Leadership Lounge. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us for another episode. I'm your host, John Gehring, as always, joined by Coach Jim Johnson and Dr. Anuma Kareem. And if you're enjoying our podcast and what we have going on here, talking to young and emerging leaders and helping them become better leaders and better individuals as well, then we'd love for you to leave us a review up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening today. If it's your first time here, though, we're excited to have you here. Sit back, enjoy, and see what you can pick up to hopefully make you a better leader. Today, we are also joined by a really special guest, too, who we met through a mutual connection. Darleen Priday has been on Ben Albert's podcast, Real Business Connections, and we've had Ben on our podcast as well. And Darleen is a matchmaker. But not quite in the way that you might think. She partners with business owners, and she partners with VAs as well, focusing business owners on their time basically to scale their business and delegate instead of being bogged down with all these mundane tasks. She is the business development manager over at Peachtree VA, and we're excited to have her on talking about delegating and VAs, and also she does some consulting as well on the side, and she's has had a background in sales too. So, Darleen, thanks so much for joining us today on the Limitless Leadership Lounge.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
And Darleen, being in the VA world, delegating is so important, and we struggle with that sometimes as young leaders. I have to say, nobody can do this like me, right? Could you talk a little bit about why delegation is so important and how that has an impact on your work at Peachtree?
Yeah, well, struggling with delegation, I think, is inherent for entrepreneurs. And while some people can get better at it, I feel like that is something that we always have to work on. I preach about it all the time, but I still struggle with it for those reasons, right? I could do it better, or when you're building a business, you have to do things. So you just get into that mode where you just do it, do it, do it. And then even thinking of passing that knowledge on to someone to be able to do it is overwhelming. You're already busy. Now you have to take the time and pass it off to somebody. So I might as well just do it myself. So you get caught in this complete vicious cycle of just repeating those patterns.
Yeah.
One of the big, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say one of the biggest things is mind shift, right? So when you really look at not can I do this, but where is my time better spent? That's when you start to see where you can get things off your plate in order to grow, because you're only one person. And while there's a time and a place where you have to do it all, that leads to burnout and actually you becoming your own bottleneck.
Oh, I hear you, darling, because when I started my nonprofit, I was like that one woman show, and getting everything like scheduling and this and that, everything together, and sometimes you mess things up as well. So that's a big challenge. And although I have a team now, but still that could be a challenging issue. But I'm just curious, like, how did you come to start or become involved in this organization? Where was the need? How did you find that there was a need of virtual assistant in this era?
So I have been in the virtual staffing world for about 10 years now.
Okay.
This Peachtree was founded by a woman who was actually a virtual assistant, and she was getting so many clients. Her name was Raquel, and she was getting so many clients that she started Peachtree VA. It grew to the point where she was overwhelmed because it kept growing. She had two young kids. So she sold the business to John McKenna, who was in the staffing world for mortgage brokers and different things like that. So that's when I joined Peachtree, which was about 2 years ago, as the director of business development. Over the years, 10 years ago, it was kind of educating people. What does virtual look like? All of those different things. And then when the pandemic hit, everybody went remote, and it really exploded the whole virtual assistant category tenfold to what it used to be.
Yeah, and crisis create opportunities. So that is the time when everybody was going virtually. And I think that is where the business, probably your business, also boomed.
Yes, because everybody, not only did they need remote workers, they also needed to understand how to work remotely. So those first few months, I wasn't quote unquote selling anything. I was just giving resources out to people on how to work from home, what are best practices, and all of those different moving parts, because people just didn't know how to, when they're going into an office, it was just a different world for them.
Mm.
So how about, Darlene, from a scenario, because our focus is to help young and emerging leaders, that person that either is the entrepreneur that's starting their own business, let's focus on that. What advice would you give that person? When is it time to really look to hire a virtual assistant?
Yeah, so there's no one answer for that. It's unique to everyone. But what I will say is that when you start to feel like things are slipping through the cracks, you are not giving your all. I mean, you're giving your all, but you feel like you're still failing, right? I get so many leaders that are just doing amazing work, but they're like, I'm dropping balls all the time, or I feel like I'm coaching on resilience and mindset, and I feel like I'm drowning. That is really when you should start to look at different options. There's so many outsourcing options now that you can take those things that are in your drudgery zone, like, if bookkeeping, right? Or if preparing documents, um, taking notes, being communicating with clients, all different things like that. If you need to be face to face to grow your business and you are your product, anything else needs to get off your plate so you can start formulating those. Not that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. And I think that's where people are like, oh, I'm not ready for a full-time person. I'm stuck like this. Our packages start for as little as 25 hours a month. That's 5 hours a week. That not just gives somebody 5 hours a week back in their day. Sometimes it increases their capacity by, 3 times, 5 times, because they're not doing those things that they're not exactly proficient in, and things that, if anybody's like me, I procrastinate with because I just don't want to do them.
Now,
Mm.
I gotta jump in one more. Okay, now that next step, you are ready to hire that virtual assistant. Give advice when you have the virtual assistant on how you can be most productive. How do you train them? Because it's a famous thing that you see a lot with leaders is, I can do it myself better. But the problem is that's why you have so many balls in your game. So give us some advice on how you would effectively train that virtual assistant so your time becomes more open for yourself.
Yeah, so that is a good point. I tell my clients it absolutely feels counterintuitive to slow down, let somebody else into your world to get that off your plate when you know you could just knock it out. But like with anything else in life, I always equate it to, like, if you have little kids, teaching them to tie shoes. It's excruciating when you have to get out of the house and they're sitting there trying to tie their shoes. But if you never teach them, then you have a 16-year-old that you have to tie their shoes. So, slowing down to empower that person to be able to take over those areas is it can be frustrating, but once they learn it, once they're able to act as, on your behalf, you never have to do it again. So that increases your capacity. So I would say, you're never going to be 100% ready, because most entrepreneurs are, building the plane as they're flying it, right? So they don't even know exactly what they need. I talk to people every day that are just not even sure, what do I need? How much time does it take? I'm doing these things in between 500 other things. I don't even know what I need. So I tell my clients, keep a journal next to your computer, whatever that may be. Start writing those things. Look at things through the lens of, before you even hire someone, look at things through the lens of not Not can I do this, but where is my time better spent? And start jotting down those things. Anything that you do that you get that sick feeling like, oh, I got to send out invoices and, or whatever that may be, start writing those things down. You will quickly be able to formulate some areas where you want to concentrate on. I start with one thing. What is in the next 30 days, if I get this off my plate, am I going to feel that sense of relief? And then build a relationship with that person. Now, there are many models out there. There's offshore VAs, there's US based VAs. We have US based VAs. Our model is relationship based. We make sure that that person is a good fit. We say it's the chemistry as well as the competency. I know you said matchmaker. I say it's like the match.com for the business world, right? But having somebody that is you can invest in, that is going to understand you, because the more transparent you are, the more that they can jump in and be able to then start pulling things off your plate. So it's not just on the leader, it is on the VA as well. And that's what we provide. Seasoned VAs that are used to working with entrepreneurs, that you kind of have to pull things out of their hands, and you can't just sit there and wait to be assigned something.
And even as a team leader, I think delegation is so important. Even if you have team members, you have a full-time staff, but you just demand that you do a certain task or whatever it is on your own. And and I know, Darlene, we talked about the mindset and how important it is to kind of shift that mindset. Is there an exercise or two that, as a leader, whether we're hiring a VA or we're just delegating something to our own team, that we can do to try and shift our mindset from this has to be done by me to no, this can be done by someone else with the proper training?
Yeah, I love that, because we do that with teams too. We tend to hold on things, and not empower our team to be able, as a leader, your job is to delegate. Your job is not to do everything. Your job is to empower your team and really pour into them and have them be able to grow. What I would say is, first of all, we all have pride and ego, right? We think we are the only ones that can do it the best way and that type of thing. But when you share your vision with your team and the why behind it, that's when they start to understand. People can learn tasks, people can learn how to do things. It's really when they are guided by, why are we doing this? What is I'm a big proponent on delegating results as opposed to the how. Like, this is my vision. This is what I want. I do it with my own VA. She does all our social media. So we meet, we brainstorm, and I share what my vision is. And then I let her run with it and give her feedback early, her feedback often. I tell her when things are good. I tell her when things are not necessarily wrong, but it's not the way that I see it. Here's a little tweak. And sure enough, after a short time, she's able to do things even better than I even had imagined, because she understands that back piece of it. I also tell, I tell my clients, but I also do this too. Give people a safe fail. I don't know if that's an actual term, but let them try their hand at something. Let them do something they've never done before and see what happens. If it's not going to be out to the client, if it's not going to collapse your business, if it's not going to take a huge amount of time, let them do something that you can come back and then say, you know what, that was fantastic. If you do X, Y, and Z, it might be, even better. Or again, they might exceed your expectation. Or if they really struggled with it and it's not a good area, then you can redirect them and not give them that type of stuff.
Mhm. And this is so important, yeah, the feedback loop. As a leader, you need to give that feedback also. And also providing them with that sense of confidence. If they get to complete that task you gave them, which they never did, there is a level of confidence you are instilling on them. So these are such important aspect of leading as a leader as well. One of my curiosity is, how do you select? What is the selection procedure of VA? Because this is what we leaders have to go through, like how to select the right team to help me. So, what is the selective process, and what are some non-negotiables that the VAs should possess? Some traits that they have to possess.
Yeah, so the nice thing about Peachtree is we do it all for you. We have a whole team that does the vetting, and we don't train them per se. They're already seasoned professionals. So that is important. We do an intentional matching where we look at not just the skills and abilities, but the type of business. I know you mentioned you had a nonprofit. You know, we want someone just as excited to help our clients succeed as they are to get the support. So for me, even if you're hiring directly, there's a couple of non-negotiables that I have. I want someone who is servant-hearted, hungry, humble, smart, passionate about the work that they do. There is nothing worse to me than somebody who's apathetic. They can do the job, but they're apathetic. I'm excited about the work that I do. As an entrepreneur, I'm sure that, I know that's your audience. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into building that business. And no, somebody may not be as invested, but you want someone really who cares about it, who's looking to help you grow, and who is willing to learn. Back when I had mentioned that a lot of entrepreneurs don't even know what they need, it's, you can only vet someone and have their skill set for what they need. But like, even in the past year, look at what AI has done. Nobody could have even anticipated it. So somebody cannot come to the table being ready with AI when it's changing every minute, but you want someone who's willing to learn, tech savvy, being able to, really not be afraid of technology and embracing change, because that's the life of an entrepreneur. It's constantly changing.
Hey, Darlene, I saw one of your testimonials on your LinkedIn page. I thought was very interesting because it said you're a remarkable servant leader. Now, we've talked about servant leadership in some of our other podcasts. I'm curious, what's your thought process? What is a servant leader to you?
Well, I think I always try to act, and operate empathetically. Doing the best that I can for people, and investing in them. I have never been disappointed going above and beyond and investing in other people, right? Like, it's always, to me, that's self-satisfying as well. So I think having that servant heart by wanting the best for them and really being transparent and honest, if we are not the right service, or even in my coaching business, it's hard saying no to people, but I have a great network that I can refer people to. I would rather have them have the right fit than just to make the sale. So I think operating authentically, really operating, I know that John was on a call. We had Bob Berg from The Go Giver on a call, and I've read all his books, and I just admire him because he always has that, give more, don't expect the return, and it comes back in a million other ways.
Yeah, we've actually had Bob on our podcast too, and he was phenomenal. And his whole mindset, I know, resonates with you, Darlene, and a lot of us who are very like-minded. Coach Renuma and I both all feel that way. And I think that's also why people are so impressed with you. Coach mentioned the LinkedIn testimonial, but also when Ben Albert mentioned you and how great you are too. And I know you've been on his podcast as well. Everybody loves Darlene because of your servant minded. It's almost like you've built a brand for yourself.
Yeah,
Even if, talk to that a little bit. How is that?
so that is a great point. And I have to credit a friend. I say a friend, but I've never met her. She came to me years and years ago for a virtual assistant. She couldn't afford us. and we just connected, and I would post her webinars, and she was she has the brand Genius, right? I just did that. Anytime she had something, I'd post on my LinkedIn, try to get her some clients. Well, then she grew and grew and grew. She gifted me a 7-day brand summit years ago, and just being so kind, and when I attended that, I understood, it was like a light bulb went off, that regardless of where I work or what my work is, I have a brand. And it goes to my core values of how I operate, being, operating ethically, empathetically, really caring about people. And she did this wonderful exercise where you go through these different choices, and it narrows your brand down to 2 words. And mine came out as inspiring hope. And I was like, that was perfect, because that's what I always say, I'm like a cheerleader for people, right? Because I'm really invested. Even if you're not using our service, I want to see you succeed, right? So in doing that, that is kind of, I still have her notes and stuff. That was many years ago by my desk. When I need to center, I go back. Am I inspiring hope? Period. You could do that in every aspect of your life. So building a personal brand is important, because regardless of where I work, I have people coming to me because they're like, well, I don't care where you are. You must be at a good company, because you wouldn't be there otherwise. So
So talk to about a young leader who might be a little bit lost, not quite sure what they want their personal brand to be. But Darleen is known as the giver, the one who's happy to jump on calls, introduce people, be giving in that way to help others, and like you say, inspire hope. So what about that young leader who's not quite sure? We're not really trying to find our way. What is a great exercise to find what we want to build our brand?
So as a young leader, I will say that when I was a young leader, I tried to morph myself into other leaders, right? And sometimes they weren't even great leaders. They may have been successful, but they weren't what their core values or how they operated were not authentic to me. So what I would say is, and I know it's easier to say now because I'm so much further along in the journey, but really be true to yourself. Write down your non-negotiables. What are things that, regardless of what you're selling, what you're coaching, whatever it may be, write down those non-negotiables, that is who you are, and then use that as your North Star with everything that you do. And make sure you surround yourself with people that are in alignment with what your vision is and what your core values are. We can always, and I say that, I have such a huge eclectic group of network and friends, and I love people that are so different than me because it challenges me and stuff, but it never shakes my core of where my values are. So, and also, if you just surround yourself with people that are not in alignment, it's very easy to look at yourself and think, I must be off base. And again, try to morph yourself into another leader.
And that is so powerful, Darleen. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think our listeners are going to have so many wealth of information, like aligning your values. That is so important. Like, who are you? Like understanding your values and then aligning them with the people you're surrounding with. That is so crucial. And piggybacking on that, I know in our country there are so many VAs who are offshore VAs who are connected with American businesses, but our Bangladeshi business people, they're still not confident on VA. Like, I have to see people in front of me when I get out of my office. I need to say hi or connect with them. That personal human connection, that is a must. That is why Bangladesh businesses still are not so much into VAs. So what would you tell them? Like, how is that personal connection built through VAs? How do you build that humanistic approach?
Well, again, I think after the pandemic, everybody hops on Zoom, everybody can make personal connections. It's different, right? So a lot of my leaders that I talk to are the same way. They're old school. They've always had like maybe an assistant right in the office. I'll give you an example. I had a college reach out, and the chief of staff, it was a very large college. The chief of staff was like, well, I have a pool of VAs that are right out there, or assistants, not virtual assistants. I have a pool of assistants that are out there, and I need to work and make sure they're doing what they're doing. And I'm like, oh, that sounds exhausting as a leader. I don't want to
Mhm.
babysit anybody, right? And we started with one VA, and her response was like, it was very eye-opening for her because of the fact that she didn't have to babysit. And
Mm.
somebody who is working and is getting done, you will see by the results, right? I think
Right.
with people, we don't care, like, we don't care when there's certain things, you don't care when the work gets done or whatever, as long as it's done and it's done well. You don't have to sit there and babysit somebody. Also, with the virtual assistant model, as at least for Peachtree, is if one week you're a little bit busier, the next week you're a little bit lighter, they'll ebb and flow with your work style. If you have somebody come
Mm.
to the office from 9 to 12 every day, if you don't have anything, you're paying them regardless. Um,
Right.
so with our monthly packages, it gives that flexibility, and it really is efficient to have somebody be able to connect, with people and support them. But
Right.
I recommend having at least one Zoom meeting in the beginning more often than not, right? You want to get to know that person, build that relationship. If you treat it like task-based, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get someone just spoon feeding tasks and then micromanaging. Again, just do it yourself, because then you can do it faster. But if you invest that time to get to know that person, give them the feedback that we spoke about, and make that connection, then it makes it, again, the more they understand about you, the more they can operate independently. When
Mm.
I have my VA, I always say, like, tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Mm.
Not everybody is great at every single thing. I get excited about things. I have a million ideas. I can tsunami somebody and overwhelm someone. I can tell you this is the priority, and then 2 minutes later say this is the priority. So I give my VAs, they can absolutely give me pushback and say, wait a minute, can you clarify? Um,
Mm.
this seems like you're trying to do too much this week. Why don't we push it out? So really that external brain that helps capture those ideas, but it's not just lost, or it's not just overwhelming, or somebody is not just sitting there feeling like, oh, this woman doesn't know what she's talking about. She just told me this. Come back to me. Just say it, because I forgot. I'm like 50, you know what I mean? I'm going 50
Mm.
miles an hour. So
Right.
easy to do that.
Sure.
Hey, Darlene, so in your consulting, changing a little bit, because we've talked a little bit about, a lot about on virtual assistants, which is awesome because it's a very important topic. But I when doing some reading on you, I saw that you also have some expertise in helping people decide if the client is right or wrong for you. Can you share a story with a client you worked with and helping them? Because that's a tough thing, especially as a leader. You're always looking to get clients, but when is the time maybe not to accept that client?
Yeah, when I do my sales consulting, I really help the person develop a strong discovery call, asking the right questions to ensure that your service is what someone is going to need, but also that that person's going to be a good fit for you. I think a lot of us are coaches in some aspect, and we've all had um clients that were not the right fit. And what happens is they're not satisfied, you're not satisfied, and it could be really frustrating. So, again, like, operating not out of fear, like I have to take on everybody, it's hard. I just did this. I just did a LinkedIn post last week. It is difficult to say no to a client when you see the possibilities, but there's something not quite right.
Mhm.
Is to make sure that you slow down and you ask those defining questions and dig in deep and not be afraid of saying, you know what, I'm really not the right fit, or it's not the right time. A lot of times it's just timing. With sales, people get excited and they're like, oh, I need a sales coach. I need, and then I look and I'm like, well, I don't even know what you do. Your website's not clear. Your brand isn't, developed, that type of thing. You need to do X, Y, and Z, and then I'm happy to help you. So just really understanding where you're going to best serve that client and really give them resources if you are not the right one, because nobody just wants to hear, no, I'm not the right, I can't help you. There's you may not be able to help them, but there's other people out there for them.
Darlene, I got to ask you this because of my curiosity you struck. Can you give us a couple examples of questions that you could ask clients to help them?
Sure. Just depending on what it is, like, what is their goal? It sounds so simple, but a lot of people everybody is not out to triple their business. Some people just want more time. Some people want more profit. Some people want more clients. What is your goal? In my service, I'll use, DP Consults as an example. Like, why are you reaching out? Where are you struggling? What is your expectation for after we work together? What will this look like, right? What is a win for you? What would set your soul on fire if we accomplish X, Y, and Z? That is really telling. That is where you can understand what their expectations are, but also reset their expectations, right? I do this all the time with DP Consults, but mainly with Peachtree VA, is like really setting realistic expectations. This way, no one is disappointed. And sometimes people say things and they're like, well, I'd like to triple my business. And like, that's not going to happen immediately. Oh, I know. So a lot of times they do know, right? But just getting it out there and clarifying and asking those open-ended questions to really understand the thought process, because I think with all of our roles, we can get so accustomed. We know it in our heads. We know our vernacular. We know everything of what we can do, that we assume the other person understands everything as well. So really just active listening and digging into those questions more and more of their wins. What hasn't worked with your clients? Where do you feel like your weaknesses are? Where do you feel like your strengths are? Give me an example of a client that sung your praises and wrote tons of referrals for you. Tell me about somebody who it imploded and it was a disaster. That's very telling on where the need is. It could be the client, it could be them. I always say, like, even with, if somebody comes to me and they're like, I've had VAs in the past. I went through 6 VAs, and I'm like, it's like girlfriends, right? One, okay, two, if they're on their like 5th wife, you're like, what are you doing? Somebody's got to look at you, like, so really, having that person understand that, they have a personal responsibility in the success of it as well.
Listening is something that you just touched on that's so important. We don't want to assume, and sometimes as leaders, we do make the assumption that we're all in it for the same thing, for that exponential profit, for scaling our businesses. Not all of us want to scale our businesses. A lot of us just want more time. We're coming up on summer here, and I know a lot of people want more time in the summer. What a great way to incorporate something like a virtual assistant and to delegate. Talk a little bit about why, like, the time element is so important for some people, because life is not all about profit and it's not all about work. I know you also have a personal life of your own that you want to get some time back for. Talk about why that's so important.
Well, I think again, as entrepreneurs, you have to do everything in the beginning. And, high achievers and hard workers, I like working hard too. I mean, we get that satisfaction out of it, but it can lead to burnout. And it also could, time, everybody has the same amount of time, right? And you have to really protect and guard it and make sure you're intentional, because otherwise you blink and your kids are grown or whatever that may be in your life. Um, but getting an assistant and really delegating some things to have time back to enjoy, your personal, your hobbies. I have a lot of clients that also they volunteer, they're on boards of nonprofits and different things like that, to really like, what do you want to look like when you're looking at the holistic view of your life? And what I say is too, is when summer is approaching, a lot of people want to take time off and they're like, but I'm slower in the summer. But that is the best time to incorporate somebody into your world. They're like, no, reach out to me in Q3 when my hair is on fire. And then getting a VA at that point is so difficult because you're already overwhelmed. So, sharpen your axe in those slow times and get those different things, have them understand, have them take on, do those long-term projects that you've been putting off, or whatever that may be. So this way, when you are busy, somebody's already up to speed. They don't have to get to know you, John. They already know you. They already know your working style. They already know how you like things formatted or your tone, so they can reply for you. So that's actually a great time to incorporate a VA, is when you're a little bit slower, and then do those safe fails, right? Give them a project, go have a field day with your kids, and then see how they did and give them feedback. And this way you build that trust, because that's the core of it all. Building that trust early on empowers them and empowers you to give them more when you are busy.
Yep, you talked about something really important too, is building trust. And as a leader, that's so important to build trust. Coach, I know you talk a lot about building trust as well and how important that is. Darlene, when it comes to building trust with a VA, you talked about the safe fail. That's so important. But there's also some crossover here with team members too. If you're a leader of a team, what are some of the other ways that you encourage leaders to build trust?
So I think again, it all goes to transparency, right? And what are the non-negotiables? So like as the director of business development, I do all the sales. I talk to every single person. I have an incredible team on the other side that does the service part of it. So sometimes they'll come back to me and say, well, did you promise this? Or did you promise that? And I'm like, here, early on, I was like, I will never promise that they can X, Y, and Z. Or, so if they think they heard that or whatever, send them back to me, right? But here are the things that I sell, and here's the way I frame it up. So, if it's outside of that, that is not coming from me. That might be an overzealous client that's excited, didn't hear me correctly. We all do it. So I think just communication is so key, to let them know where they are. And also, I think it's important to give credit to people when they are doing something right, even though like I'm a one woman show on this side of it. Sale, if I don't have confidence in my team for what they are providing, I can't sell. So they are part of the sales process. Everybody's part of the sales process. Everybody is part of the customer experience process. So there has to be communication, there has to be trust. And people have to realize that even when you're acting independently, it's still a team effort.
Any final questions from Dr. Kareem or
I,
Coach?
I've got one last one that I'd like to, because you talked a lot about sales, and sales is important in any leadership, whether you're selling a service, selling to your team, selling a product. So take us through some advice you would give a leader on becoming a better salesperson?
So I think that people when and I coach about this to all of my clients with the consulting is it has to be a mind shift, right? People think, "Oh, now I have to put on my sales hat and I have to get out my value and I have to hit these points and everything like that." If you're having a genuine conversation with someone and understanding what their needs are, sharing how you can help, and then at the end, if even if they don't move forward, building that trust that they understand what you can provide and they trust you now and building that relationship, that is the win in sales, right? Because they may not need you now, they may need you in the future, they may never need you, but they know people that can use you. So I think as far as just authentically sharing. And that's why I encourage entrepreneurs before they're hiring a salesperson, you are your best person to sell. You built this business, right? You are passionate about it. Don't look at it as sales. Look at it as having a conversation and sharing what you do. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off. I had one client she had mentioned that at the her boyfriend was a coach and he was like, you have to get, the credit card before the end of the call. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds horrible. Like that's like a lot of pressure. Not like it sounds horrible on the person that is on the other end of the call, but also for the salesperson, right? If you're like, I have a half an hour to share my value, understand, and then get their credit card, like that is it's a terrible way to look at it. But if you're like, hey, I'm going to have this conversation, I'm going to share what we do, you want that person to have buy-in. I don't like to close immediately unless somebody is really familiar with the service and they came in already like, oh, I am set. I've been through your website. I get it all or whatever. That is maybe 10% of my calls. Most of them need to digest that information. I want them to have the buy-in because that is what is going to make the relationship stickier and longer, and you're not just churning clients. So taking that pressure off yourself to say the win is a sale and moving it to, did I build that relationship? Did I convey my value? Did I build that trust? And sure enough, you will build a sales funnel by doing that.
Yeah, and Darleen, this is so true because as a nonprofit, running a nonprofit, relationship building is one of the key areas when we are going for a marketing call for fundraising. So sometime when they talk to me, they feel that authenticity because I talk with passion of what about my organization, which some others might not convey that message. So that's why, like, what is the mission? What is the purpose? And how you can also benefit from being part of this team. So I make them feel that you are part of the team when you are helping Heroes for All. So this relationship building is so important, and sometimes just being authentic, that sends the message. Not like I need that number, I need these and that. That doesn't work.
Yes, no one wants to feel sold. No one wants to
Right.
feel pressured or pushed or anything like that. And again, empathetic, that's why I preach about empathetic sales, putting yourself in that person's shoes and understanding what would I want to hear if I was on the other side of the call. It sounds weak. It sounds like, oh, okay. But I've always been a top performer in sales operating that way.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, that's the mindset shift that a lot of our, ever since becoming more active on LinkedIn, how many sales pitch? I know you're very active on LinkedIn too, Darlene. How many sales pitches have we received that are like, come on, it's unbelievable. Yet people still operate that way. Coach is saying too many, right? I mean, it's one of those things where we're tired of this. We need a new, fresh perspective, and we're certainly in alignment of the fresh perspective sales wise that you provide.
Yes, yeah, LinkedIn has become just, and coach, I think one of your messages were buried because I get 500 DMs about trying to sell me something. So it can get frustrating, but I think, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater either, right? Because there's a lot of people on LinkedIn. Connecting with them has been such a blessing, like Ben and meeting you, John, and now, you know, that's where your network grows and you get inspired.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Darleen Priday is a Peachtree VA is where you can find out more about Darleen, and probably the best way to connect would be up on LinkedIn. Or is there another way, Darleen, that you'd like our audience to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is great. And I'm happy to have any, you know, call if you're wondering about a virtual assistant or what that may look like. Again, no pressure, just knowing what options are available sometimes helps that entrepreneur have a focus on what could be in the future. And I'm happy to do that.
And then also
Right.
DP Consults as well. Talk a little bit about what you're doing outside of Peachtree VA with your consulting.
Yeah, so I had started that because of the fact that I had so many clients when they were coming to me for a VA, they were like, well, do the VA sell? I need a salesperson. And I'm like, that's the last person you need. Like so that's what kind of got me started. And then I workshopped with some people who were coaches. So my main clients are coaches and service providers that are not ready for a salesperson yet, but they don't have the confidence to be able to sell their services. They probably built their business by referrals and then they're like, okay, now I'm talking to outside people and I feel like I failed or I don't even know what to
Mm.
say, or they don't have the follow-up processes. So I go through everything with them to help them really be able to convey their message in a clear manner, be able to follow up in a manner that makes sense for them and to start building their funnels so this way it does continue to grow.
Darleen Priday, notes down in the show notes, or links down in the show notes, I wish I should say, to get in touch with Darleen and learn more about what she does. We'll both with DP Consults and with Peachtree VA. Darleen, you shared so much valuable insight today, especially on delegating for young and emerging leaders, because that's so important, especially as we head into the summertime and we want to enjoy some personal time and avoid burnout too. So thanks for all the time that you spent with us, first of all, and then all the insights that you shared. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And if you go to peachtreeva.com, there's an ebook, a free ebook that has a lot of delegation tips and
Nice.
regardless of what direction you go in, it's still valuable.
Thank you so much, Darlene, for all that you do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darleen.
Peachtreeva.com to learn more. And Darleen, very valuable. Thanks for all the information you provide and all the free stuff too. That's really valuable for people. Being in sales, I know it's something that a lot of people are more for the sale, but you're for the value first. So that's really refreshing.
Thank you so much, everyone.